Hi, my name is Andy Park, and I'm the Director of Visual Development at Marvel Studios. And in this class, I'm going to be talking about how I approach designing a goddess of war. So let's get started. Okay, let's start creating some art. How do I usually start when I'm going to be doing a character design? Usually I start off by sketching, by coming up with a pose. What's the best way to sell this character that I'm going to be creating? What do I know about this character? So I'm thinking about different ways rather than just like standing there like a doll. I'm going to give it a little bit of a look and feel on the posing. So I usually start off, 8 by 11 inches, which is roughly 2000 by 3000 pixels, and then eventually, I might increase it to be, 4000 pixels tall, roughly. I like to have a gray background. I'm using the circle brush, the one that says 19. It's a standard Photoshop brush, and that's what I normally use. I'll squash it like you see right there, and over in the right corner, lower right corner, you'll see that I squash it. Not totally, so it's more like it's like a chisel pen, but not completely flat. Angle it a little bit, and I usually when I'm painting, I have my hotkeys set so that I can increase the brush size, and then I can at the right next to it I can increase and decrease the hardness, so you can see that in the lower right. So it'll make it softer, more like an airbrush, and if you go harder, it'll make it more defined edges. And I'm painting with I would say like 40% gray, and then I just start sketching. So yeah, I'm just searching for what's the best way to convey this character. And this one in particular, I'm thinking more about the Morrigan, the rebel sister. So I'm just doing really quick ideation, just poses. I don't want to get too boggled down on details or anatomy. I'm searching for what's the best pose that I can do for this character. So I'm trying out different things. Trying to go. This is sped up to I think 2.5 times faster than what I was doing it at. Because it can get very boring if you just see me paint in real time, but it gets the idea across. So I'm just trying to, play with different attitudes, showing her strength. Maybe this one's a little bit more of an action pose, where she's standing there ready to battle an army. But usually I'll do a handful of these before I decide what I want to do, because usually the first idea is not always the best. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times you kind of want to just, this doesn't take too long too. You just kind of come up with poses, different ideas to sell her attitude. So I'll do maybe like 3 usually. I'm doing 5 here just for demo purposes. But yeah, this is essentially the process that I'll do. Just, a lot of life drawing, so a lot of just like figure drawing. What I used to do back in the day when I was going to art school. So I would do these kind of sketches. And keep it simple. I'm not thinking about anatomy. Simple cylinders. The head just being an egg shape, and just so you know where the eye line is in the middle of the head. So, and once I go here, I'm going to do this with each of these. I'm going to kind of start refining them a little bit more, so you can start seeing the basics of their anatomy. Thinking about the rib cage. So here I'm thinking more about the anatomy and trying to get the figure to be more solid, so it's not just almost like a stick figure like the initial stage. Thinking about the pelvis, and then the main anatomical features. I'm still not thinking too much about the details, but I'm just trying to get the basics of the figure down. So this is very basic figure drawing, and I'll do things like that. I'll try something out, and that's the great thing about the digital medium is being able to just erase it out. And a lot of times I won't necessarily use the eraser tool. Here I am, but I think what I usually typically do is I just keep it as a brush, kind of like what I did right there, but I accidentally had it white. But normally I have the background color set to the background color of the canvas, and then I can just use use a hotkey which is X, just to switch back and forth from that 40% gray to the 10% gray that is the background. So I can just press one key and it'll toggle back and forth from dark gray to background gray, which essentially acts as an eraser. Just makes it easier rather than trying to switch back and forth from one hotkey, which is B for brush and then E for eraser. I can just press one button to go back and forth. And this is the other great thing about doing digital is I can, right now I'm warping it. I did Apple Command T, which was a transform tool, and then I went to warp so that you can manipulate it, and it's a really cool. I use that a lot to kind of, after I draw something, to see if I can get something to have a little better gesture or a little bit more dynamic. And as you can see, I didn't like that. I erased it out. Don't get too precious with it. That's at this stage, it's all about just trying things. Should I make her leg straight? Should I bend it? Should it? Yeah. So I'm just trying different things to see what looks and feels right. That's what I love about digital medium. I mean, obviously you can do this with pen and paper, or pencil and paper, I should say. But right there, I warped again because she was a little bit too skinny. I can transform, adjust it. Yeah, it's just really fun just to be a little bit more free. I can just kind of flow doing this digitally, and I don't have to, worry about I have to erase, and then, yeah. I mean, I still love drawing with pencil and paper as well. Nothing beats that at the end of the day. But for concept art, that's why the digital medium is a standard, because it's all about changes. You're constantly making changes. Even after you do a concept design, you have to show it to a client, and they will tell you to make changes. And if this was a traditional media, to on a finished painting or drawing, to make changes is not as easy. But in digital, it's you just take a big brush and you erase it out, or you just make it the color of the background and on a new layer. That's the other part about the digital medium, is obviously using layers. So whether using Photoshop or some other digital program, layers is a must to be able to try things. I tend to use a lot of layers just because I guess I'm not as confident. So I'd like to just try things on a new layer sometimes. I'll take it so far on a certain layer, and then I will, add a new layer at any given point. I'm not as organized as some people. Like one of my coworkers, Jackson Z, he's so organized in his layer system. So he keeps everything very organized. He has one layer for a character, one layer for a background, and one layer for each element in the painting. I try to do that, especially in the beginning, but inevitably, eventually, my layer system gets all messed up, and I have, next thing you know, I have like 100 layers. So I'm not that efficient when it comes to my layers, but the great thing about it, the whole point of it, is that I can try out different things. So, yep, I'm just kind of bouncing around. I felt like doing that the fourth one. Now it's the third one, and now I'm going to this one that's a little bit more an imposing stance, facing the camera, getting ready to face her enemies. So this generally you could see I do the rib cage. I break the arms down to 2 big cylinders. I start thinking about the pelvic bone. I tend to indicate it, and then down to the thighs, the knees, the calves, down to the feet. Always thinking about rhythm. You're always thinking about anatomy too, but it's always about how it fits with the whole. And that's why I try to go fast, because if I just sit there and spend all this time on the calf and how it connects to the ankles, to the feet, next thing you know, like it doesn't work with the rest of the pose that I'm trying to convey. So at this stage, I'm just doing it fast. I'm like getting the general idea of the anatomy without thinking too much about the anatomy, because I'm still thinking about that general pose, the lay-in that I have in there, but I'm starting to refine it a little bit more so that I can have a better idea of if this is the direction I want to go. And typically when I'm doing a concept painting, I won't necessarily do this many poses and spend the time. It doesn't take that long, but still I would generally do like maybe 2 or 3, and then pretty quickly try to decide on, okay, I'm going to stick to this one particular pose, and then start jumping in to the actual design, because everything's about speed. We got to get these characters designed as fast as possible. Working in film, working in video game, they want everything that yesterday. So that's the beauty of doing everything digitally. And as you can tell, I flipped the canvas. It's something I definitely recommend for every artist. I used to do this when I used to draw comic books in my Tomb Raider days, but it couldn't do that because I was drawing on actual Bristol board. So I would constantly either be looking at my drawing in a mirror. I would always have a mirror, which I don't really have these days, or I would hold the drawing up towards a light so I can see it upside down. And here I'm just kind of increasing the levels to make it a little darker because it was a little light, just so they pop and I can see them better. And then this next, I'm going to take like one of these characters and just kind of play with, because up to this point, I was just sticking to this one body type, which is, fairly thin and somewhat athletic. And I wanted to play with the idea of like different body types, because not every single character is always going to have, the more this kind of body type that you typically see. So I'm going to be playing around with just this body type and three body types. So the body type you have here, and this next one, how you can take that exact same pose and start doing a little bit more athletic. Someone, not necessarily a bodybuilder, but someone who's certainly a lot more buff and goes to a gym a lot. So, giving them, wider lats, thicker waist. You see their triceps and their forearms thicker, and their leg muscles getting thicker. And, it's subtle, but it's, that's reality. Like when, somebody's buff, their silhouette doesn't change that drastically compared to someone who's skinny. It is noticeable, but when you're doing drawings like this, unless you're doing a stylized, you can see the difference there from skinny to, definitely someone who's beefed up, muscular. And this last one, I'm going to take this one and turn to someone who's a little bit more, not as muscular, someone who's more plus sized, so thicker, still, strong. This person is still strong, but it's not going to be like muscular strong. It's going to be like thick, like heavier strong. So, it's fun to play with like all different types of body shapes, body proportions for both men and women. But this, my whole class that I'm doing for you guys is more about female characters. So, I just wanted to touch upon different body types. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but just to give an idea of how you can take the same pose, make subtle adjustments, and you get a whole different character, because of body type. There you go. There's the three types. 1, 2, and 3. And of course, you can go further in all directions, both ways. But same pose, just to give a little idea of, getting different body types. So at the end of the day, I get a lot of questions about, what do I need to do to become a better concept artist, better character designer. At the end of the day, this is the foundation. When I went to art school, when I was studying during my schooling days, it was all about figure drawing. I did figure drawing every day. I was studying anatomy. It starts from the bones. That's what gives the solidity, the foundations of the characters that we're drawing, and then all the muscles and ligaments and everything that goes on top of that. If you understand the bone structure underneath, even though you're not drawing the bones that you see here, it's going to come through those landmarks. And then it's not only about understanding the structure, then it becomes about rhythm and being able to pose and make it believable. Because at least in the course that I'm teaching right now, it's about coming up with more on the realistic side. I mean, these drawings right here, they're just from my head. I do the poses, I come up with the anatomy, the rhythm, everything from my head. And a lot of times I'll take that to a finished painting, but there's a lot of times, many times, that I will then, at that point, once I like a pose for a particular character, I will either take a photo of myself, or I'll ask a friend of mine or my wife, or I'll ask them to pose, and inevitably there's errors in my drawing. And I can see it now. There's errors in these drawings right here. But I will take that, and then I can adjust it to take it to another step and to bring it into a reality, especially if I'm doing something for film, where for live action film, like the work that I do at Marvel Studios, it needs to feel realistic. It can't feel like a stylized human being or a comic book. This is a little bit more stylized. You could see it in the legs. They're not very realistic looking. So that's where a reference comes into play. So whether it's taking pictures of myself, or you can look online and look for photos, taking it the next step to that place of reality is always a good idea. So let's move on to the next chapter.